I expected nothing, and yet I was disappointed anyway. Welcome to patch 11.3. I'm gonna talk about the changes and what I think of Splatoon 3's future. Let's get started. First off, they're adding the Raiders plastic bottle splattershot to the game. If you have save data and have beaten the main story, it's a splattershot skin with the Denshattack kit. Enjoy. On to the main weapon changes. Carbon Roller is getting slightly better damage on its vertical flicks for 50 damage and 100 damage ranges, as well as getting increased movement speed when holding the ZR button down to move forward by about 5%. I'm going to bring up the Zuka buff as well now because this is the main weapon that is going to benefit, but Zuka is also 13% faster shot velocity wise. The type of change that Zuka got is kind of what I've been wanting, more skill expressive specials to get changes that aren't giant radius increases. I think it's a fair change, and I think it'll make it a bit more fair for following up and getting proper Zuka shots while it still requires about the same amount of skill. The reason I'm mentioning it now is this will stack with Carbon Roller's other buffs, and Roller is already a very good main weapon. I do think that normal Roller is still going to be better than this one, but Carbon does have its own use cases, and I think this is a very significant change. The vertical flick kill range under ledges and combos with burst bombs are going to be quite crazy far now, and while rolling is rather situational, it is very fast and probably the most practical roll out of all the rollers. I could see this being a seriously underrated option, and Roller players might have more things to switch around to. Next up is Tri-Slosher, a very common meta weapon right now, so it's no surprise to see it here, except it's getting a buff. It's going to be 5% less ink hungry. And yeah, this primarily helps Tri-Slosher Nuvo, the weapon that wants to try to get as much cooler as possible and now has more ink tank after it throws a fizzy bomb. It's not the biggest change in the world, but it is a buff and a very random and surprising one. Outside of Pencil, this was already probably the best cooler weapon in the game, and nothing really changes from that. So yeah, alright. Next up is Gloogadoolies. After a dodge roll, it'll be 10% more accurate. I mean, alright. This is a complete nothing burger change. It isn't really going to do anything. It is not significant to move the placement of the Gloogadoolie. After that, it's finally time for some nerfs. The dreaded 52 gal is up, and yeah, it's 8% less painting range. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't nothing. 52 paints annoyingly far away. It's one of the last changes we did in Splatoon 2. For those who are confused why 52 suddenly took over the game, we gave it a shot velocity buff with an ink efficiency nerf that wasn't good enough. That was okay when we had a decent amount of midline slayers that were keeping it in check, but over the past year, all of them have gotten nerfed. And now this weapon's taking over. How are we going to fix it? Oh, and by the way, it's not lost on me that this is literally the same nerf we did at the very end of Splatoon 2. We didn't try anything different. And both of these nerfs are still reverting a previous buff.
Thanks, Nintendo.
And this change means that it won't be painting over people as easily who are trying to space out the weapon. It also won't paint as much, and combined with the 210 killer whale, might mean it doesn't have a lot of whale to refill its ink tank and get another wall. Is it enough to stop the weapon from being a dominant, top tier, used everywhere in solo queue and competitive play? Absolutely not. We did not do enough about it. I'll talk about that later. But it's not a meaningless change. It is something, it's just not enough. E-Liter is also getting a nerf after this, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be the same thing that happened to Dynamo. Heavyweight weapons get better ink saver main stacking, and now it's probably going to be the same as normal weapons. E-Liter currently needs 4 subs of ink saver main to get a 5th shot on in full ink tank. I'd imagine this will probably take 5 or 6 subs after this patch. Pencil is up after that, this one being a direct ink consumption change by about 7%. Pencil's currently stack enough ink saver main to get 3 shots on a full ink tank. This currently requires 2 subs. It will probably require 3 to 4 now. That's a very similar pattern. Last up is Tri-Stringer. It just gets an overall slight decrease in its paint output, and in addition to that goes from 190 to 200p on the Super Chump kit. This is the only set of changes that the devs directly talked about with any amount of specificity, saying that they made certain main weapons more difficult to keep zones inked or maintain pressure on opponents. Solo queue has been backline paint spam hell, especially in splat zones, but just in general for a while. E-Liter, Pencil, and Tri-Stringer have been by far the best anchors in the game for quite some time. A lot of people have found these weapons annoying. They are all getting changes, with the core idea being that they have more downtime. If you have more main saver on your Pencil, you're going to have less charge up. If you need more main saver on your E-Liter, you're probably not going to have last ditch effort. If you don't want to sacrifice your gear, you're going to have less downtime because your weapon's going to be less ink hungry than when you had the gear. Pretty self-explanatory. Tri-Stringers is hidden a little bit more, but you paint less and you get your special less soon. What Tri-Stringer likes to do is shoot long enough to get its ink tank and use it to refill and be able to shoot for longer. Because it's painting less and getting its special slower, it's gonna have to spend more time recovering its ink tank. You get the idea. This is a core part of backline balance. They maintain drastic pressure on an area, so it's important that there is downtime and attack windows for opponents to be able to push in. That's what these changes are for. Which ones are affected the most, we have to see. Personally, I think Elior will be affected the least, mainly because it's not going to be too hard to change your gear around, and well, Tri-Slosher got buffed and gets picked with it quite a lot. Pencil, on the other hand, is probably nerfed the second most, because this output also affects its cooler output, something that's already not particularly high. But the main loser of this is absolutely Tri-Stringer, because an overall paint change is more significant than an ink efficiency one. It's going to have multiple effects on this weapon. Tri-Stringer is still good enough to win. It will probably keep winning, and winning with the same stuff that it could before in the right hands, but it's going to be harder. Tri-Stringer was, unfortunately, the biggest problem of paint spam when it came to these weapons. I wish they compensated with it a little bit, maybe made like the jetpack kit slightly cheaper or something, but I think overall these are good changes in the right area. These weapons did need a tone back in this exact kind of manner, and I think if anything this is going to be the most impactful change in the patch. Alright, next up for specials. We already mentioned Trizuka, but let's talk about Ink Vax nerf. It gets a decrease in HP that it could be absorbed by about 9%. If I can tell correctly, it means it's going from 1200 to 1100 HP. It is a very small change, but in my opinion, it's a welcome one. Filling up Ink Vacuum is kind of difficult and usually not very possible. This change is going to make it a little bit easier to do that. I think that Vac 96, which is the main thing this is trying to target, should have probably also been 200p, but this might be good enough. I gotta be honest here, I have a bit of a soft spot for Ink Vacuum. It's one of the few more difficult specials that we have prominent at higher levels of play, so I don't particularly mind it getting nerfed in a way that just makes it slightly harder and less obnoxious. Overall, probably a good change, and Vac 96 is going to be in a more healthy spot. Triple Splashdown, on the other hand, got quite a bit of a drastic rework. It's going to become invulnerable to damage 1/6 of a second faster. We don't know what this is going to look like exactly, but 1/6 of a second is 10 frames. It is going to be invincible much sooner than it used to be. This is going to make Splashdown cancels way harder, and that's intended. To compensate for this, the damaging area of every explosion is reduced by 9%. Again, 9% might not sound like a lot, there's 3 explosions, it is a lot. However, there is another change done by this. They increase the distance the fists travel by 9%, with the devs noting that this change will reduce the area that deals over 100 damage because of overlapping explosions. So say you're between the player and one of the fists and it takes you out because of that. This means that Splashdown is going to affect a wider area. In fact, its paint on the zone might be quite strong if people don't start shooting the fist down. Please start doing that, by the way. It's going to be a problem if we don't. However, its lethal radius is going to be much smaller. You can utilize the fists a little bit better with their extra distance, but even then, again, smaller kill radius. This does 2 things at the same time. Splashdown is harder to kill, but has a harder time killing. This is kind of made to address the problem with Splashdown, where at a certain level of play, it's way too easy, and past a certain level of play gets punished too much. I like this rework. Overall, we have to see how it plays out, but I think this is a good way to tweak the special so that it's more balanced at all levels of play, and I like that the fists are more emphasized in terms of how you're supposed to use them rather than just panicking the special. Here's my problem. It's attached to Custom Blaster and we didn't do anything to that gun. Custom Blaster is very strong, one of the best weapons in the game, top 2 or 3, and now its Splashdown is significantly stronger, and we didn't do anything to tweak it further. This is going to become an issue. It is also going to make other weapons that we are trying to desperately kick down in the meta to make it more fun to play against, like 52 Gal, be better, because Blaster and 52 are best friends that love to pair together in team comps.
We'll use the power of friendship. Oh shit.
Like, we didn't even nerf the points for special on Splashdown for Blaster. Nothing. You know, it's just a little disappointing. And we're basically done with the changes here. There's 2 points for special ones I haven't mentioned. Frozen Pro is 180p, which, sure, I don't think missile spam is the biggest problem in the world. Why not? And Custom Hydra's 190 for Scream. Completely irrelevant. The bubble one is significantly better than the other 2 Hydras in pretty much every way. Now, look, I don't have a problem with any of the changes they did in the patch. None of the things they did were bad changes. They all work fine. They all accomplish the proper goal and target the right weapons. But it's not enough changes, and that has been a very very consistent pattern. Last patch, I said that they finally did what they needed to do because the changes were in the right areas. I was absolutely too light on the devs because the changes that were done were not enough to significantly affect the weapons they needed to affect outside of the heavy splat lane. And now we are kind of in the exact same spot. We nerfed 52, but not by enough. Blaster is not nerfed by enough and got a power spike. Backlines, okay, those are probably fine, and Inkvac might even be fine. You know, some fixes, but 52 Blaster stuff was the main problem with the meta, and I don't see that changing from this update. And in general, the buffs are disappointing, and I've said that so many times that I'm frankly a little bit sick of it. We got a cool buff for Carbon Roller, and nothing else. That is literally the only weapon that I care about with patch changes. I think this is very deliberate. The patches for the game are slowing down. They are clearly moving resources away, and this is just seen as less important. And that sucks, you know? It just does. I want the game to get better treatment. I don't want it to end in a bad spot. At the rate they're doing it, if we get patches for a bit longer, it'll probably end in a better spot. But it is going to be a very slow and dragged out process to get there, and I don't think it needs to be. I get that we're probably working on Splatoon 4, but I don't think it would be harder to give like one more nerf to 52 and something else to Blaster, or buff some other weapon a little bit. I really don't. So yeah, I mean, the patch is disappointing, not for anything it did, but because it didn't do enough changes outside of that, or as significant changes to make things really shift. And that's probably where things are going to be for a while. I will be waiting for the next patch while playing Splatoon Raiders and cautiously hoping for developments in the competitive scene to get better. Thanks for watching, guys.